hear me okay?
Mhm.
Okay, good. Okay, so the Tea with DFD is basically an opportunity for me to talk to my students and for us to learn a little bit about other people's dance journeys because when it comes down to it, like what we do at DFD is so much more than dance. It's about your personal growth. Also, hey, Fareen. Um, Speaking of which, Fareen was one of my first students, so this is really exciting. So yeah, we've come a long way in our dance journeys, and it like means a lot to people. I have my own personal story, but I really want to hear from my students on what their story is behind dance. And today we're talking specifically as it relates to sort of your cultural identity. And so the first person we're going to talk to today is Shruti. Hey.
Hello.
Who is also my TikTok consultant. She was the one who first told us to get a TikTok, which, by the way, shameless plug. If anyone doesn't follow us on TikTok right now, you should, because I'm getting better at it, if I can say so myself. So, but yeah, so Shruti, I want to know from your perspective, like you have been dancing with me for a while now, and I have seen you grow as a dancer. So I want to know from your perspective, what what's your growth been like, not just as a dancer, but personally too in these last, what, like 4 or 5 years?
Yes. So I think before I joined dance, the main thing is that in my personal life, like in my school life too, I feel like I kind of shied away from like showing my Indian side. Like I would keep my American side at school and then like my Indian side at home. And I feel like dance has allowed me to kind of meld those two and be more expressive of like my culture at school and like share about it with other people.
Hmm. So, I guess what kind of changed between like then and now that now you feel more comfortable to share it?
I think I just used to think that people wouldn't be interested in it. And like, I thought that if I shared it, people would just perceive me as like too Indian or like too, like, I already, like, people already knew I'm Indian. So I just kind of shied away from like even like expressing it because I was afraid if I said anything about it, people would think I'm just like the Indian girl. But like, I like started
Yeah.
talking more about it in ninth or 10th grade. And then it really like helped me just like connect with more people and like like be more open about my culture. And really I started um because I started like sharing stuff about dance on like stories and like on social media, and I realized that people are actually interested in it and they aren't just gonna get all awkward when I talk about like Bollywood
Yeah.
dance.
It's interesting you say that because I think I was telling like Bari and Brenna once that I was like, how come no one like reshares our stuff on their stories and stuff? And I didn't realize, like, it hit me later that that could be why. Like, because now that like it was the same thing for us when we were younger too. Like, of course, it's so hard to like kind of embrace both sides of your culture and like be like so forward about presenting it. So I totally forgot about that. But then lately, yeah, I have seen that actually that you guys do that. So besides that, like what do you now share with people when you do talk about your dance and your like life behind that?
Yeah, so like all my close friends, they all know about dance and like how much it means to me. But I started sharing it with like a lot of my teachers, and like one of the first times I shared it was when we went to DC that summer. I was taking driver's ed classes, and I had a teacher and she was next to me and we were just making some small talk, and she started talking to me and she started asking me like, what do you do for fun, like outside of school, or like what are your hobbies? So I said, I do Bollywood dancing. And like immediately she was just like, oh, that's so cool. Like, how is that different from like normal, like Western dance? And like, what do you do? Like, where do you do it? And I like showed her a lot about like DFD, and I told her like, we're going to DC. And like, I even showed her the video like after we went to DC. And she
Yeah.
was like very impressed. And she like, didn't know that there was a whole circuit of collegiate dancing. And even I showed my pre-calc teacher at school too, and this was after we went to Kentucky and competed, and she had no idea there was like a whole like national like circuit where there's like Bollywood collegiate dancing.
Right. I think people know that like in the Western, like when it comes to like ballet tap jazz, there are like very like nationally competitive forums and an outlet for that. So people don't really know that much about it when it comes to Bollywood fusion, whether it's like local competitions or also like the national ones that, you do in college. Again, because it's in college, it doesn't happen sooner. So That totally makes sense. And are you usually like, it sounds like you're usually the first person to even inform them about anything related to Bollywood dance, because people don't, I think they just, a lot of people probably know of Bollywood dance as whatever they see on TV. So what do you think of that? Like, how do you feel when you see like Bollywood dance portrayed, or Indian culture in general portrayed in like mainstream media here? Like, I know there's like new shows coming out nowadays and stuff like that.
Yeah. Well, when I see it, I'm like proud that it's being represented in like big media forms, because I feel like no one really knows about it. They just think of like the classical move and
Yeah.
like classical dance, but they don't know like the depth behind classical, or they don't know like how much like there's also like a Bollywood side that like implements like hip hop on like Indian music. And I feel like a lot of people just don't know about it, and it being on the media just like shows it. And actually, have you seen Never Have I Ever?
Yeah, I finished watching it. Yeah.
Yeah,
There was an
so
episode
I
where there
was
was Bollywood dance in it. Yeah.
mhm. Yeah, so that part really struck out to me because first of all, I'm just glad that there's a show like that on
Yeah.
Netflix that like is an accurate representation of like what it's like to be like an Indian American teen. But also I realized that like Devi, when she saw it, she said they're cool here, but if they did that anywhere else, they'd like look like clowns. And then the other girl was like, do you even know what you're talking about? And it just
Right.
like kind of shows that like I feel like before I had that mindset that people would think that if I like dance not like in front of an Indian audience, but then I realized that I can dance in front of like different audiences and they will still be pretty appreciative. It's not like I have to show like hide that part.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That totally makes sense. And that's really cool that you have that sort of dance journey to realize that before you even go to college. Because at least for me
Yeah.
personally, like that was sort of the point of starting DFD, is like I didn't get exposed to sort of both sides of my culture until I did fusion dance. And then that's where I was exposed to it. But that was not until college. And I felt like we need to be able to expose ourselves to, you know, like be more open-minded about culture in general and sort of embracing both sides of ourselves much earlier on, like in middle school, high school, because that's where you kind of struggle with that, like you did. And that totally makes sense to me.
Yeah.
It's interesting that you talk about it from that perspective, because the next person we're going to talk to, Anika Saxena, she actually she has like a similar story, like a similar outcome from her story, but a slightly different perspective. Anika Saxena, if you want to like request to join on this, because I think I lost your request. But yeah, Shruti, if you have anything to add, feel free. But I
Yeah.
think that's kind of a cool story that you have.
Yeah, thank you. Just one more thing. I recommended all my friends to watch Never Have I Ever, and I was like, if you're friends with
Yeah.
me, you have to watch it. And especially like the thing you said about college, there's the scene where the guy says, I'm appreciative of my culture, and I learned that it's okay to be Indian when I went to college. And I feel like dance has really just brought me that even
Right.
before. So
Right. He did say that. I remember that. Yeah.
mhm.
Yeah, no, that was a good episode, like in general.
I know.
But yeah, I did the same thing. I recommended it to my friend from high school too. I was just like, I think you can relate to it because you're friends with me. So you know, like growing up what I went through. So you're gonna be able to relate to it by default. So
Exactly.
yeah,
Yeah.
I totally get that. Cool. Well, thank you for joining us. And
Yeah.
I think I'm gonna have to take you off before I can add her on, I'm assuming. So
Okay.
I'll do that.
Yeah,
But
sounds good.
thanks,
Thank
Kristen.
you.
Thanks. So like I said, the next person we're talking to is Anika Saxena. So I'm going to add her in. I have to pick this up. Okay.
Hey,
Hey, Anika. How's it going?
good. How about you?
Oh, I think you got a little stuck there. Good. Good. I'm doing well. So I don't know if you heard Shruti's kind of story um, before this, like before we started talking, but she was talking a little bit about how she was able to embrace her culture through dance when it came to her like sort of Indian side. And so I wanted to get your perspective because I know it's a little bit different. So go ahead. I think you're cutting
Well,
out a
yeah,
little
I
bit,
found
so
that really
just
interesting
wanna.
because, like, I kind of. Hello?
You're good. Go ahead. Yeah, you're good. Go ahead.
Okay, so I found it really interesting because, like, I've seen it from, like, a different point of view. Because, like, actually growing up for me, like, I was really exposed to, like, my Indian side because my parents really wanted to, like, instill my culture. So I leaned a lot more towards, like, the Indian side of being Indian American. And then actually, when I was in sixth grade, we moved to India. So I was there for 3 years in middle school when people usually, like you said, like they're struggling with their identity, but they're finding a way to become like Indian American. So during that time, I became like really, I embraced a lot of my Indian culture because it's what I was surrounded with and it's what I felt comfortable with at that time. And then like growing up and then coming back here, I always did Kathak dancing. So like everything I did was so much to like my Indian side that I felt kind of dissociated with like my American side and my American culture.
Mm-hmm.
So then actually it's really interesting because like I joined DFD like a year ago,
Mm-hmm. Yep.
and like since then it's because it's like a fusion of Bollywood but then also like Western styles. It was familiar, but it had that introduction of like American culture, which I always felt like I was lacking. Like
Mm-hmm.
I always felt like I had to try and fit in to be like normal and American, but it was such a great way to introduce me to like American culture and for me to like embrace it and actually accept that I'm Indian American. And it's like it's not just the dancing, it's like the people and like the peers and the teachers where it's like just talking to them,
Mm-hmm.
like and becoming friends with them and actually like knowing them. You learn more about yourself along with them. And I think that was so interesting.
That's awesome because you've also only been with us, I think, for a year, right? And you said you did Kathak
Yeah,
before that, so you also had some of
yeah,
that training. So you know that, like, obviously, like Kathak and like other classical styles, as well as like in Western ballet and things like that, have a lot of discipline to it. But I think people
right.
don't realize, like, even Bollywood or Bollywood fusion does too. So talk to me like a little bit about that too.
Right. So like I from Kathak I learned a lot of discipline and like learning technique. And so then like coming to DFD, it was like kind of awkward at first because like I didn't it was like a different like style, but then once like I actually got into it, like I realized it was the same thing where like once learning the techniques and like getting that discipline to practice and get better at the dancing, it's the same, it's just as rigorous and it needs the same amount of discipline as
Right.
any other classical dancing. And I found that so interesting because, I feel like a lot of people think that like classical dancing is like boring, but it's like uptight, and so that's where they think, oh, it's like you need a lot of discipline for it. And but still, like even with like Bollywood and fusion dancing, that amount of discipline is needed,
Mhm.
even though it's like a different style of dancing.
Yeah. No, it is. You just said actually about how like a lot of people, especially because at DFD we teach a lot of kids, so like even younger children.
Right.
When I first
Mm-hmm.
introduced like a semi-classical piece, a lot of the kids were like, "This was like back like 3 or 4 years ago." They were just like, "Wait, we're doing this? It's like kind of boring." And I was like, "Excuse me?" And then only when we went into like the nitty gritty details and like they had to like really like go past the hurdles of actually mastering the things did they appreciate it. And so like you said, that discipline is required in like all art forms, and that's what helps you appreciate that art form. And then like you said, in turn,
Yeah.
like also connecting it with your culture, because I definitely relate more to you about what you said about I always felt really close to my Indian culture. Like, no surprise, I think most people know about me that I was obsessed with like 90s Bollywood, and like I spoke
Yeah.
Hindi like fluently, and like I was very well connected, even though I was brought up here, to my Indian culture. But I
Mm-hmm.
also, when I was like a teenager, felt pretty disconnected when it came to my American culture. And so I didn't get that until I started dance in college. Like, for me, that was an outlet of like kind of embracing both sides and bringing it together. So to hear you say that, like I can relate so much. Like that's really cool. Um,
Yeah.
but I also want to get your perspective, since it is a little bit different than Shruti's, on like again, I asked her like, what is it? How do you feel when you see like Bollywood dance or Indian culture like represented in mainstream media? Like what about for you? Like when you see that?
I think they show like a tiny aspect of it. Like Indian culture is so diverse and they show like only what they see in the movies or like what they perceive, which is like a really it's like a really westernized vision.
Mm-hmm.
So, but like Indian dance is so diverse. There's so many different like cultures and there's so many different forms and there's so many like I don't think people realize like how you're saying that like collegiate levels like there's
Mm-hmm.
it's just as serious as like any other kind of dancing. Like I have a cousin who was in like a bhangra group
Sure.
in college and like I know that like she worked like super hard on that and like she loved competing and she loved that and it was just as serious as like when people think of like ballet and jazz and all
Right.
that like it's the same amount, same level. And it's like there's Bhangra, there's Garba, there's like and then there's also like Bharatnatyam and Kathak and Kuchipudi. There's so many different forms that like people have like these perceptions that they're not like Western enough or like they're too like exotic. But I think actually showing that would be like so great, like how you said like in Never Have I Ever, like actually showing dancing that's actually like true. I think that's so cool because it kind of strays from like that westernized vision that like we all have.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that's that's a true take on it because when I was younger, I like barely saw anything on TV about Indian culture, let alone Indian like dancing, nothing specific much to dancing either. So it's cool that you guys are starting to see that and it's starting to go into that realm of like being more accurate than just like either super pure classical or like you're just screwing the light bulb or something like that. So yeah,
Right.
no, that's a really good point. But yeah, no, thank you for sharing your perspective because it was a little bit different from Shruti's in that, you know, her angle was that she got closer to her Indian side. For you, it was that you got closer to sort of that American culture side through dance that you've done with us. And next, we're actually going to talk to Monty, who was kind of always like in between. She always really like kind of kept both together. And I'm interested to hear what she says too. So thanks,
Yeah.
Anika. I'm going to add her in now. I think I have to take you off before I do that though. So
Yep.
we'll talk
Bye.
to you soon. Bye. So I'm gonna add in Monty now. Let's see. Also, I'm just looking through all the comments to see. Hey guys.
Hi.
Oh, hey Monty. Hi.
Hi.
So you probably heard what we've been talking about with the last two people, Shruti and Anika. They were talking about kind of like their dance journey and like getting closer to like one side of their culture or always being close to one side, but then getting closer through dance to the other side. So I know you were talking about something like that a little bit different. So I just want to hear like your dance journey, like how that's been.
So I started off like as a little kid doing ballet and jazz because that was what was around back then and like that was the only thing I found. And then after a while I found outlets to express my Bollywood side and my Bollywood culture at like Diwali parties and like local shows. And so I really wanted to connect both of them like from a young age because I did both. And so
Right.
that's really been a part of me for my life. Yeah.
Yeah. And how'd you how do you think you've grown through your dance experience, specifically in dance, I guess? Yeah.
Well, I mean, I've always had this like side of me like that always wanted to like connect and like create this like culture that defines both like the Western side and the Indian side and like combine them together to create this like new beautiful culture. And
Yeah.
it's been like a journey for me to try to find my identity. And I think I'm really at a place where I have found my identity. I mean, I created like a documentary to like explore my like Indian American culture and show it to my like teachers and my friends about like this entire like culture that we have here in America.
So you've always been pretty like comfortable with like sharing
Yeah.
anything like about your culture and stuff like that. So um more recently have you I know Shruti was talking about like how she shared some of her like dance routines and stuff like that. So have
hmm
you also shared that and has that been something new for people or like tell me about that a little bit?
So at first I was a little shy to share my like
Mm,
Bollywood dances to my school friends and things like that. And it wasn't like
yeah,
a thought out process. It was just like a subconscious thing that I always did. But then like
yeah,
I came to DFD and I like really learned that like there are so many like forms in Bollywood and anyone can connect with it. And like anyone can appreciate the hard work and dedication that goes into like dancing and
mm,
they can appreciate it. 'Cause like I mean, dance is like a universal language, so everyone can like appreciate it for what it is. So
yeah,
I show it to like a variety of my friends and family. I even show it to people in India, and
yeah.
they love it because it's dance and it's like this new thing that they can see and learn from and stuff.
That's cool. How did you first get into dance? Like, was it like a
Um,
family thing or yeah?
yeah, so my nani was a Kathak dancer and oh she was a really beautiful dancer. She used to play Shiv in
Mhm.
the performances that they had in India. And in fact, she was like first in UP India for dance. She was just a beautiful dancer. So that's really translated onto me and I've always wanted to emulate her in like that form. And so she yeah.
That's cool. And you share like your stuff with her too, like even
Oh
though it's
yeah.
non-classical, like does she like it?
Oh yeah, she loves it. She loves seeing all these like new dance forms and like for her that's like really like awesome and like exciting. And everybody in India is like
Yeah.
so like amazed by this like cool like it's a new form. It's just a mix of all different like cultures and dances and so to them it's very
Yeah.
exciting. So I love that.
That makes sense. That's cool because you share it with, like you said, your friends and then your family too. I think the fact that like what we do has like you said, so many elements to it that like we have so many layers that when you share with someone, they're gonna find something in it that has
Yeah,
that they
they're
can
gonna find
relate
some
to,
way to
or they
connect.
find something to connect. So like that's really cool that you share it like back home and here, and everybody can kind of connect to it, even though it's like a bunch of different things. It doesn't seem as foreign when it's like fusion like that. So that's cool.
Hmm.
It's cool that you talked about you said you kind of got into dance through, you know, family too, like your nani. So we're actually going to talk to Anika Rao, another Anika, but we're going to talk to Anika Rao next. And she also was saying something about her dance journey kind of starting with her family too. So we'll kind of hear from her now. But thank you for sharing your perspective on your like
Thank
dance.
you.
Thanks. Hold on. And I'm going to add, let's see. So next we're hearing from Anika Rao, who has been a student with DFD for, hey, hi Anika. I was actually just about to say, we're talking to Anika Rao, and she's going to be a student. She has been a student with us for how many years now?
I think 1.5 maybe.
1.5. Yeah. So you're also like fairly recently joined. I think you were in North Andover first, and then you were in Acton afterwards, right? Yeah. So tell us how you got into dance, because I think it was also through family, right?
Yeah. Well, I started dance at a young age, and it was because my sister did it, and she's always like inspired me to dance. And then I was brought up in India, and I stuck with dance for my whole life, but like when I did other things like swim and stuff, I always dropped it because I wasn't that interested. And then when we moved here, I knew I wanted to do dance, and my sister has been doing dance her whole life too. She
Mhm.
is now Northeastern Rangila, and I want to do that one. And she's always inspired me to do like dance, and she's been
Yeah.
my friend.
That's cool. I can relate to that. Dance is like a huge thing in my family too. So, but what about your like dance journey? So you said you started in India and then you moved here like a couple years ago, right? So talk to me like about how you've sort of evolved with your dance journey.
When I was in India, I didn't really have any Western options, and I've always wanted to do dance, so I always resorted to classical in India because there was no other options for us. And so then when I moved, I knew I wanted a more Western option, but I didn't want to let go of my Bollywood side, and I couldn't really find a mix at first, so I kept going with classical at the beginning. But then when I found out about DFD through my sister, it like gave me a side of both of them and like meshed my cultural Bollywood side and American style.
Yeah.
Did you ever like also like the other girls were talking about how like sharing it with their peers, they didn't really like do that initially. What was it like for you? Like, especially because you said you grew up in India and then you came here. And then of course like you're transitioning into the American culture. So how was it for you, like your perspective on the dance styles?
I always also hate it because I felt like I don't know why, but I felt ashamed of it. I don't know why. But then like eventually there was this contemporary piece I did, and it showed me that they do that and they don't hide it, so why should I hide it too? And
Right,
it's dance. Like it's something you love I love doing, and I shouldn't hide something that I love just because I
right,
was.
right. And so how has kind of your perspective kind of changes on that probably also because like you said, it was the contemporary piece that like changed it for you, right? Because that's like pretty relatable for people who don't do Indian dance at all. They do like classical jazz, ballet, jazz, tap, hip hop, contemporary. So that's cool that like that kind of I think I was talking to Monty before too, or was it Anika, that like we have so many layers that someone will at least relate to some kind of layer. So that's what kind of I think even for me, when I was doing fusion dance, it kind of clicked with me too that when we're dancing, we're doing so many different things that part of it is cultural, but part of it is also just as like any other person would do here in their dance classes too. So it just made it all the more relatable. So yeah, no, I totally relate to that. So I guess what in just like a broader perspective does dance mean to you then ultimately? It's a loaded question, but I'm just curious. I would answer that.
Dance is just like a way of me expressing myself and my culture, and it just connects me to my identity, and it's like
Mhm.
part of me. I'm not afraid to hide it anymore, and like it just it brings my confidence up when I'm like down, and like it just helps
Yeah.
me through every.
That's really great. Thank you for sharing your perspective. And I'm so happy to hear like you guys had like a journey where you could take dance and use it as a means to like not only get confident in yourself, but confident in like sharing what we do, because many times you guys are the first people to share that with somebody. Because a lot of people, it's totally normal that you initially feel like hesitant to share your Indian dance style or culture with people who are not Indian. And like a lot of people go through that. But the fact that you guys have kind of overcome that by like fusing like the dance cultures together, I like really hope more people do that, because your friends and like your network is the first they're gonna ever hear about it is from you guys. So it's really cool to hear that you guys are doing that and you're actually like sharing it with people. So yeah, thanks for sharing your perspective as well. um
Thank
Sorry,
you.
I'm just gonna like opt out of this thing. But yeah, thank you guys for like listening in. I really wanted to do this kind of what we call the tea with DFD, because I want to talk to my students about, when we're in the day to day, like teaching our students, we're always talking about dance or like what we have to do. We don't really get to hear about their dance journey, their stories until like maybe backstage at a show or something like that. So quarantine is a really good time for us to be able to have these discussions and talk to students about their dance journey or like things that they struggle with, like this what we just talked about, like being able to share the fact that you do Indian dance when you're in middle school or high school. You should feel like comfortable to share it with people, and I think that only comes from within though, and that comes from your dance journey. So I wanted to hear about that from our students. And so today we talked a little bit about sort of that cultural identity aspect. So next week we're going to be back and we'll be talking about kind of facing your fears through dance. So we'll be here next week and the week after that. So I'll come back. And then the only other thing I did want to say is that for anyone who's interested in kind of getting involved with DFD, we're always looking for teachers. So feel free to hit us up, DM us, whatever. And yeah, hope you guys have a great rest of your Saturday. Thanks for joining us.